Welcome everyone to EnergyLab's 2023 Climate Solutions Accelerator Showcase. My name's Adam, I'm the Program Manager and I'll be your host for today. I'd like to kick things off first by acknowledging the traditional owners of the various lands from which we're joining from today. I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri people. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present. Thank you to everyone for joining today. It's great to have you along to meet the startups and get to know them a little bit better. We'll give you the option to ask your questions and hear from them directly. We've got startups today focusing on waste streams, we've got financed emissions, even aviation. So a really good, interesting mix, all focused on different parts of the climate tech sector. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the Climate Solutions Accelerator program in a moment. But first, I'd like to introduce you to our CEO, Megan Fisher, who's going to tell you a little bit more about everything EnergyLab does and how we fit into the broader decarbonisation journey. So, Megan.
Hi, thanks, Adam, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. It's really fantastic to be here. Since 2017, EnergyLab's really been focused on reaching net zero with a mission to support founders with breakthrough technologies and business models addressing the global climate crisis. In 2023, we've really expanded our program portfolio, and we now offer programs that support aspiring founders and startups from ideation stage all the way through to scale up and international expansion. Our founder and startup programs include the Women in Climate and Energy Fellowship, building the next generation of women founders, the Climate Tech Ignite program that supports aspiring and early stage founders to generate, to test, and to launch their startup ideas, the Climate Tech Charge program, supporting startups to build traction, to connect with investors, and to really acquire that initial seed funding, the Climate Solutions Accelerator, that helps startups deploy their solutions and secure growth funding. And that's why we're here today. So during today's showcase, you will get to meet our 10th cohort of our accelerator program. This program's been running since 2017, and we've had 76 startups actually take part so far. Then we have our Scale Up program for later stage startups looking to pilot their solutions with industry, the Going International Bootcamp that's designed to kickstart startups' overseas expansion plans, their strategies, and create really great connections in those overseas markets. And our Supercharge Australia, which is a joint program with our partner New Energy Nexus to build the startup innovation ecosystem focused along the lithium battery value chain. We support these programs with expertise from our network of more than 370 amazing mentors, with funding connections from our 180-strong EnergyLab Angels network and our institutional investor contacts. So far, over 170 startups and 130 aspiring founders have graduated from one of our programs over the last 7 years. So as COP28 takes place in Dubai, I'd really like to reflect on our progress and the role of innovation on our journey to net zero. The annual progress report for Australia's Climate Change Authority was delivered last week. The report outlined that if we successfully implement all of the announced policies so far, we'll still fall short of our 43% emissions reduction target, hitting 42% by 2030. Now, this miss might seem small, but let's put that shortfall in context. The last financial year, emissions were still rising, not falling. And I'm not sure about all of you watching, but I know that many projects don't successfully deliver on all of their outcomes. So we still have a lot that needs to be achieved as we journey through the 72 months we've got to reach 2030. The other point I'd like to raise is that last month, the International Energy Agency said that reaching net zero by 2050 doesn't require new fundamental scientific concepts or breakthroughs like those of solar, wind, and lithium batteries, all of which actually, when you look at the initial tiniest scientific breakthrough, took 100 years from initial breakthrough to mass adoption. But that 35% of emission reductions required would actually need to come from technologies that are still in development. And this is where the innovation ecosystem, including startups, has a really big role to play to move these required technologies through the development cycle and create those performance improvements for existing technologies to make decarbonisation more affordable and faster to deploy. That's exactly why we do what we do at EnergyLab. So let's get ready to talk to some founders that are working on the types of technologies we need to help us bridge these gaps and reach these targets. The startups you meet today offer such exciting technologies and business models focused on low emissions transport and aviation, decarbonising steel, more effective management of wind and solar resources, and the really important recycling of both solar panels and batteries at their end of life. Thank you very much. Back to you, Adam.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, so before we bring the founders up, I just want to give you a little bit of context. So we're going to zoom back slightly in the year. So in February and March is when these startups first applied to join the program. We run quite a rigorous selection process, which culminates in a pitch day where a committee of angel investors essentially vote for and choose the cohorts. The startups you're going to meet today have gone through that selection process. In July, we kicked off the program and we focus on three main areas: international expansion, raising capital, and sales and industry partnerships, which I think were three key themes to help startups at this kind of stage. So today, the format of how we're going to run the session is we'll have each founder join one by one. They're going to pitch, and we're going to try and fit that into 3 minutes. So we've got them lined up and going to keep to time. And then you'll have the opportunity to ask your questions to them in the Q&A tab. So you should be able to see the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. So if you can drop your questions into there, then what we'll do is we'll have a few minutes and we'll try and answer as many of your questions live as we can. Also, a thank you to those of you who sent your questions in advance. I've got those in front of me, so we'll try and cover those off too. If anyone's unaware, when the founder and the slides are up on screen, you can adjust the slider across so you can see their face a little bit bigger, but that's completely up to you. That's your preference. So I think we're ready to kick off. So I'm going to invite Shalini Divya from TasmanIon up onto the screen. He's going to get us started. Hi, Shalini.
Hi, Adam.
Over to you.
Thank you. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Shalini Divya, the CEO and co-founder of TasmanIon. Well, the world is rapidly moving towards electrification to fight climate change. However, solely depending on lithium-ion batteries is not going to cut it. Also, lithium-ion battery manufacturers have certain problems. For example, the raw materials are non-abundant and they have a varying spot price. Some of these chemistries are flammable in nature. Also, when you have new recipes being plugged into the existing production lines, there is always a scale-up risk. Combining these three factors together, you always have the risk of increasing the battery cost, especially lithium-ion, in the future. To solve that, we bring to you aluminium-ion batteries with a proprietary cathode material. How do we do it? Well, aluminium is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust. The proprietary cathode material is also a commodity, therefore cheaper batteries. The raw materials are non-flammable in nature, safer batteries. We have already tested by plugging in our recipe into the existing production lines in the commercial labs at no extra cost or service. Therefore, it's easier to produce. Aluminium can be cheaply recycled, and the commodity, the cathode material that we make, can also be cheaply recycled. Sustainability is an added aspect to the TasmanIon cell. Our aim is to revolutionize the battery industry by introducing a much safer, affordable, and a greener battery technology for the stationary storage industry. We are targeting the small to medium scale rooftop solar. And where do we start? Australia. Last year, the Australian government had set aside around $220 million for installing community batteries. To say further, that number and the expansion of this industry is going to be exponential. And TasmanIon is going to have the best niche market here. We are not alone in the rat race. You have lithium phosphate, sodium ion, and other aluminium ion chemistries. But how is TasmanIon better? Firstly, the overall cost of a battery is much cheaper than what you currently get in the market. The cycle life is actually comparable to lithium-ion chemistries. Now, these two factors become the driving forces for the stationary storage industry that we are targeting. And therefore, we definitely have the potential to become the winners. What have we done so far? Currently, the technical team is de-risking the technology, and we have already initiated conversations for prototype development, deployment, and testing with commercial battery labs and battery manufacturers in New Zealand and abroad. We have an IP right now at an international stage, examination pending, and we're keen on expanding this family next year with our recent technical developments. We have an amazing team of scientists and technicians and amazing board of directors who keep us inspired. Next year, TasmanIon is going to raise its second capital raise for the seed round. We are aiming for $3 million to speed up the technical de-risking, establish the strategic partnerships with the commercial battery labs, and also validate our business model. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Questions, welcome.
Thank you, Shalini. So I might jump straight to a question which was sent through in advance. So this one's from Barry, and he asked, he's keen to hear about the competitiveness of the technology versus lithium ions. Perhaps you can go into that in a little bit more detail for us.
To begin with, aluminium, it has a very stable supply chain. The cathode material that we are using, it's not a fancy nano material, which means resourcing the cathode is a very, very easy task, which is how TasmanIon claims to reduce the battery cost further. The new chemistries that we hear about, they're kind of using some complex structures. They need their own custom manufacturing methods, adding to the overall battery cost, which TasmanIon avoids.
Excellent. Thanks, Shalini. I think that leads on quite well to the next question I've got from Mitra in the chat, which is, it's quite a small cost difference from lithium-ion, given lithium-ion is already hitting significant economies of scale. He's guessing you're quite a long way from hitting that $80 to $100 target. Maybe you can talk us through how you, the cost difference and how you're bringing that down and where you're at.
I am so glad for this question, because the cost on the screen is what the TasmanIon lab is doing at a lab scale. We have done our estimates, and the numbers are pointing towards $30 to $50 in the future. And when I say in the future, that is when you think of a big battery pack. Because we do not have a prototype developed, we are still trying to figure out how to sure that the BMSs or the other battery components in a battery pack can be outsourced. So that is how we know that the overall dollar per kilowatt hour value of a TasmanIon cell is going to be much more lesser than what lithium-ion is providing right now. Oh, also, one more thing to add. The dollar per kilowatt hour value is heavily dependent on the cycle life, which is why I brought that up, because the more cycles you have, the more we can claim that the batteries are affordable. So we get to win in that aspect as well.
Well covered off. Thanks, Shalini. We've got a question here from Davood, who's asked, what's the density of the energy storage in watt-hours per kilogram in this technology?
So we are not as good as lithium-ion battery. We are comparable to nickel-cadmium and nickel metal hydride batteries, which is why we are not targeting the EV sector at all. Tesla is not our competitor, but Powerball is. So when you need an industry that is prioritizing cost, cycle life, and safety over the energy density, that's where TasmanIon fits right in. So energy density is comparable to nickel cadmium, but not as good as lithium-ion is doing right now.
Excellent. Thanks, Shalini. I might take one more question just from the chat. This one's from Matt. He's asked, are you aware of what the performance would look like in extreme temperatures? Are there any advantages over your system versus standard lithium-ion batteries?
As a chemist, I know that the materials that we are using are averse to the temperatures, but a battery in itself, they have a much more advanced temperature testings, which we have not reached yet. You always want to make sure your recipe is perfect before you go on to long-term cycles or temperature aging tests, which we are yet to do.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I think we might wrap up there. Thanks for that, Shalini. So we're going to drop you down now. Thanks for joining us, and
Thanks, everyone.
We'll bring Lewis from Bygen up next. Hi, Lewis.
Hi, Adam.
Good to see you. So we'll bring up your slides for you in a second, and we'll hand straight over to you.
Cool. All right. So, hi, everyone. I'm Lewis from Bygen. And we're on a mission to enable access to clean air, water, and soil with our sustainably produced activated carbon. So what is activated carbon, you might ask? Well, it's a really crucial material in the modern world. It's a black powder or granular material that's been made to contain very high internal surface area. So 1 gram has around about 1,000 square meters of surface area inside of it. And to give you an analogy, if you had a teaspoon with activated carbon on it, you'd have the same surface area inside that carbon as a tennis field. Because of all this surface area that comes from the presence of tiny little holes that we call pores, it's a really excellent filter material because essentially you can use it to trap chemicals from liquids and gases and solids inside of the actual carbon structure. So it's widely used in a diverse range of industries, including things like drinking water treatment, precious metal recovery, as well as polluted soil remediation. So it's already used extensively as well. Around about 4 to 5 million tons are used every single year currently. It's over a $10 billion market. It is growing because of increasingly strict environmental legislation around air quality and water quality. But despite all these great benefits for society and the way that it's used, the way that it's currently made is very harmful and expensive. You typically take a carbon-rich material, which is coal, and then you react it with steam at very high temperatures, around about 1,000 degrees, which also requires additional fossil fuels for heating. And that reaction generates the activated carbon. But again, very expensive, very energy intensive. So at Bygen, we've developed a process that we call low temperature activation that helps reduce production costs by up to 60%. Our patented technology allows us, as the name suggests, to make activated carbon at much lower temperatures, as low as 250 degrees compared to the conventional 1,000 degrees. We also don't need anywhere near as much water. The process, very importantly, is entirely self-sustaining, so it generates its own heat, meaning we don't need to put any external energy input into the system to maintain it. And when we do this, because we use sustainable alternatives to coal, like nutshells and wood, our process is actually carbon negative. So we sequester around about 2 tons of CO2 for every ton of activated carbon we produce. Now, this also has added benefits aside from the reduced production costs. Our capital cost for equipment is a lot lower as well, around about 30% lower compared to the conventional activation process. So to date, we actually currently have 3 operational production units. We have built, commissioned, and are now testing our 4th unit, which was our largest one to date. And we have a sizable pipeline of opportunities to build plants afterwards. We also have signed many agreements with large-scale activated carbon users, including recently with a European activated carbon company who uses around about 3,000 tons of carbon every single year, as well as licensees for our technology in the waste industry. We have already made and sold bulk quantity, i.e. tonnage quantities, to customers, and we've raised about $1.5 million to date. And in terms of asks, so very happy to get introductions to any heavy industries that might use activated carbon, like in mining or water treatment, as well as connections to potential licensees for our technology, which are companies like waste producers and ag and forestry industries. And we are about to close our capital raise, which will be around about $2 million. But of course, when we go out to raise it again in the future, I'm happy to have a chat with anyone about that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lewis. So while we wait for people to get their questions into the Q&A tab, I might start with one of my own. So what's going to really unlock this for you? Is it sales of your product, or is it acquiring the feedstock? Are you kind of limited by one or the other more so?
No, well, look, in terms of the abundance of like the raw materials we use to make activated carbon, I mean, if you just look at wood chips, which are one of the main ones we work with, there are millions and millions of tons in Australia alone. And given the size of the market, it's 4 to 5 million tons. I certainly wouldn't say that that's a limiting factor on our growth. Luckily for us, the activated carbon market is quite large, so we do have the potential to grow to a large company just from selling activated carbon. I think for us, it's really just about execution from this point in. So really delivering on the pipeline of opportunities and the agreements that we already have.
Excellent. Well clarified. Thanks, Lewis. Might go to a question from Dave here in the chat. So he's asked, does activated carbon manufactured in this way have the same performance characteristics of traditionally manufactured activated carbon?
So yeah, good question. So we can really do two things. So we can, a lot of the market, because it's almost like a commodity material, there's very clear QA, QC requirements for customers that buy it. Basically, looking at what I talked about earlier, the surface area, so higher surface area generally is higher quality. So we can look to kind of match industry standards quite readily. One of the things we do for some markets, we're actually able to tailor our product to improve performance. So looking at different sizes of pores and different chemicals on the internal surface. So particularly in the markets we're going for first, like in drinking water treatment and in PFAS remediation, we've actually been able to quite dramatically exceed the performance levels compared to sort of our competitors in the market.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks, Lewis, for clarifying. Got another question from Mitra here, and I know you got this question recently, so I'm going to ask you again. It's to do with the sequestration of the 2 tons CO2. 2 tons of CO2 per ton. I know you've got a stack of how you work that out. Mitra's just interested to understand that a little bit better, how this offsets compared to existing methods.
Yeah, so fundamentally, because we're using short life cycle biomass as our input, the carbon that's in that biomass has been taken from the atmosphere as CO2 as the plant grows. If that plant was just left to decompose, the carbon would go back to CO2, and that's a carbon neutral process. However, what we're doing essentially is we're taking the majority of the carbon that's in that input material and converting it to activated carbon, which is highly stable. And the key point there is it does not convert back to CO2 for millennia. That's very well established. And therefore, if you do a carbon balance around the carbon going in and the carbon coming out, there's a sequestration effect. There are some other benefits that don't really get captured in that 2-ton figure, in the sense that actually what happens when biomass decomposes a lot goes to methane rather than CO2, which is worse than CO2 from a climate point of view. So we avoid that. And then also the conventional process emits about 20 tons of CO2 for every ton that's produced. So there's a net sort of 22 ton of CO2 difference between us and them. So it's actually a few different factors there.
Excellent. Thanks, Lewis. Got a question here from Jeff. He's commented, great progress. He's interested in what the capital raising will be used for going forward. I think it's a good question forward looking, is how you're looking to grow.
Yeah, so we actually, our business model, which is hard to sort of clarify in a short pitch, but we're not building, owning and operating these plants ourselves. So we are actually licensing the technology to the waste producers, who then fund, own and operate the plant themselves. So in order for us to grow, we're not needing a huge amount of capital, because really we just need the team and the resources internally to kind of deliver on those projects. So the main use of this capital raise in particular is growing the team and also setting up a centralized distribution platform through sort of new equipment and things like that, to help us transition from where we are right now, which is being able to sell tens of tons a year, to being able to sell thousands of tons a year. So that requires some additional infrastructure.
Awesome. Excellent. Thanks for clarifying that. Good. We're able to clarify your business model here on the call as well. So I think that's all we've got time for, Lewis. So thank you for taking those questions. There's plenty more in the chat, you'll see. So maybe you can get to those over the next 10 or 20 minutes individually, type the answers in, but we'll let you go now. Thanks for joining. Cool. All right. So next up, we've got James from Orkestra. I'm going to bring James up onto the screen now. He's got a lovely backdrop out there. So I'll hand over to you, James, whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Adam. Yeah, I'm actually in the Blue Mountains today for an all hands retreat for our team. So yeah, it's a very nice place to be doing this call from. So I'm James. I'm the co-CEO and one of the co-founders of Orkestra. I run the growth team within the business. I'd just like to start off by picking on something that Megan said, which is that we have all the technologies that we need to kind of achieve decarbonization. And that there's a little hiccup, and that is that we've got to get very, very good at deploying these technologies. So when Bloomberg New Energy Finance looked at this, at this problem, and back in a couple of years ago, they looked at what we needed to do to get on track for net zero globally. And they looked at a number of different scenarios. They looked at nuclear, they looked at carbon sequestration, and they looked at renewables and how we could do it with renewables. And they determined that renewables was definitely the cheapest way to do it. So yep, good tick there. But they also determined that we needed to deploy around 6 times as much wind, 6 times as much wind, 3 times as much solar, and 26 times as many batteries. Sorry for the mistake on the slide here, as we did in 2021, every single year to 2030. And when you think about what that means that the current companies and different players that are in the energy market and energy sector need to get very, very good at deploying these technologies, and in a way that is a lot more efficient than it is today, because we're very unlikely that we're going to be able to deploy 5 to 20 times as many resources in this sector over that period. We're really going to have to get very good at becoming more productive as an industry. So when we think about this, we see that the energy sector is going to have to do this from within. So there's a lot of energy companies out there that are trying to make this work, and that for those that are going to win, they're going to need to become the trusted energy guides for to navigate this massive transformational change, and that it's not the energy sector exactly the entirety. It's also their end customers. So the people, it's the businesses, it's the homes that need to, they need to become the trusted guide to help navigate this challenge, and navigate from being a big centralized system where you just plug in and set and forget, to having a combination of front of the meter opportunities when participating in markets, and behind the meter opportunities, installing local technologies. So where's Orkestra's place in this? So Orkestra is setting out to become the world's best feasibility analysis software for commercial energy projects. So when we think about the entire market, we see electricity as being our focus. And when we think about electricity, we see that commercial and industrial is a really underserved sector. So actually 2/3 of the world's electricity is commercial industrial sector, and we're focusing on that. And we're putting out a software to help people model solar and batteries and EV chargers and tariff optimization, financing, and other things in there. We've had really good success to date. So we've had a 300% growth in ARR this year. We've now got over 70 customers in 3 different markets. So we're in Australia principally, but we've also just recently got a bunch of new customers in Japan and New Zealand. We've had 500% growth in usage of our platform. So we're, just last month we did nearly 500 projects in our software. And customers really love us. So, we've got this great quote on here, which is that, I'm not going to lie, guys, I love the product. I mean, fuck yeah, I'm just raving about your product to others. I mean, this is actually pretty typical of the kind of reaction that we get out of many of our customers that are using this software. We're not doing any raising for a while, so we've just raised our seed round back in July. We're hoping that will take us out to 2025. So stay in touch and keep following our progress. And if you're in the energy sector, come and sign up and check it out for yourselves.
Thank you, James. Okay, so we've got our first questions come through from Mike, which looks like it's on a broader topic, but I think let's go to it. So Mike's asked, is it the corporate policy of big energy the greatest challenge to scale up, or something else?
Scaling up Orkestra or scaling up?
I think he's talking generally.
Generally. Look, I think generally it's a challenge of policy. It's a policy settings, amongst governments, setting the right frameworks for businesses to have the confidence to scale up and invest into this sector. That's really a big one. But I think that is largely that's largely in the utilities space. We're nicely insulated behind the meter, meaning that there's other factors that feed into it. It's not just the government policy. The biggest driving factors that we have in this commercial industrial space is that there's a huge push towards net zero. We've got all these new reporting standards for carbon for businesses around the world firing up. So huge amount of focus on how do we decarbonize all of our supply chains, and energy prices are going ballistic. I mean, we saw extraordinarily large rises in power prices across the globe when the Ukraine war broke out, and that's just a sign of things to come. We might look at that and go today and say, well, that was a blip, but actually that's not a blip. When you think about where we're heading and the transformation that we're going to occur, we're going to see much more volatility in energy prices, and that's as reason enough as you need to go and start creating your own energy supplies and having a bit more certainty around the cost of delivering energy.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Got a question here from Robert. He's asked, what scale of projects does Orkestra service? And he's then added, would it service a wind farm or grid support batteries?
Yeah, no, so for commercial industrial, we really think about that as being in this window between about 100 kilowatts and up to 5 megawatts. But that's really just the sweet spot for the software. We can do everything from modeling a solar system for your house, Robert, right through to like the next, utility scale solar and battery farm. It's just that those parts of the market on either side of us have different needs. So for residential, it's about trying lowest cost, speed. It's not really about feasibility. It's about sort of aesthetics, and lowest cost is what wins you in that market. In the utility scale space, it's much more around how does your system fit into the broader market? So are you going to have a material impact on the bid stack? Will you have system strength issues? Do you have the land to go and deploy this? They become other issues outside of feasibility. Whereas in commercial industrial, we're really speaking to financial decision makers who are making a decision on, does this make sense, economic sense? If it does, then I'll do it. And so we're really getting to the heart of that problem, which is trying to speak the languages of these financial decision makers. So net present value, internal rate of return, payback periods, how much cash flow is this thing going to generate for me? So that's really what our software is about, is trying to help people understand that. But yes, it can be used on either side. It just so happens that most people are using it for commercial industrial.
Totally. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, James. I think that's all we've got time for live, but you have plenty more questions, I think, to get to in that. So maybe you
start
can
answering
get busy.
them now.
Yes, that might take you the rest of the meeting. So thank you, James. We'll let you drop off now, and we'll get ready to bring up Dennis from Savic Motorcycles. Welcome, Dennis.
Hey, Adam. How you going?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Dennis Savic, and I'm the founder and CEO of Savic Motorcycles. And we're a high-performance electric motorcycle company based out of West Melbourne. And we've completely developed and we assemble all of our vehicles there. In terms of the market itself, the markets that we are targeting are across Australia, New Zealand, and into the UK and EU regions. It's about a $17 billion market size in totality, and we forecast an obtainable market size of about $500 million across those regions. In terms of how we differentiate ourselves against our direct competitors, we compete with them on design and price. Against our indirect competitors, however, we're obviously an electric motorcycle, and we very much sit in that premium mass market segment. And one final thing, 95% of our vehicle has been developed by us in-house, so software and hardware, and we managed to retain all of that IP. As of today, we only need about $1.5 million to basically turn cash flow positive by the end of next year. And the peaks and troughs that you can see here, they assume a production rate of about 20 units a month, for which we already have all of our orders for. We are, however, raising or looking to raise $5 million as a part of our Series A. And basically what that'll help us do is increase our marketing and sales activities and begin exports into New Zealand and into the UK. We'd like to set up an additional facility to the one that we already have for 20 units a month, and that will enable us to produce 3,000 to 5,000 units per year. We also want to reduce our costs to achieve our profitability targets of about 40 to 50% gross margin. Finally, the last thing I'll say is that we do have 2 MOUs that are in progress and about to be signed with 2 international strategic investors. So we're looking for people that are investors, either individuals or family offices, what have you, who would like to come on this journey with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Excellent job. So I might start off with a question. I don't think there's any in the chat just yet. Oh no, there's one here from Matt. So Matt's asked, have you thought about ongoing maintenance and service for customers? If you've got a lot of proprietary parts and design concepts, maybe a deterrent purchasing the buyer? I think that's a very good question. Thank you, Matt.
That is a really good question, and definitely one that we have been solving. So basically our strategy is to have very few company-owned showrooms, if you will. So we're not going to be investing in huge amounts in terms of infrastructure, and we are in the process of setting up a service network. So we already have service partners in Queensland, New South Wales, and we're working on one in Adelaide now. And they'll basically be the trained and appointed service dealerships who can service our vehicles. So yeah, the strategy is service network, but we have an online sales model.
And when you're expecting to have to start servicing these, where are you up to with deliveries? I understand you've got some hoping to go out soon.
One thing I forgot to mention is production started yesterday. So yes, that's part of the reason why I'm so puffed at the moment. But basically, the first service is a month after the first delivery, and then it's every 8,000 kilometers or 18 months. So we like to just check the bike over about a month after it goes out, and once that's all good, they're pretty solid. Yeah.
I think probably a particularly good idea for new product as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, what does next year look like for you? So you're going to try and do some deliveries, hopefully this year, and then what are you trying to ramp up to?
Yeah. So look, we're targeting to ramp up to a production rate of 20 units a month. In terms of what next year looks like, it's just stabilizing the operation and getting the sausage machine ticking over and getting bikes out the door. And we've got a nationwide test ride tour that we've planned for. And so, yeah, getting a lot of bums on seats and customer feedback will be very exciting, because we've had amazing feedback so far from everybody that's ridden it. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting year 2024.
Excellent, definitely. We've got another question here from Alexander. So he said, I'm guessing your customers couldn't give us stuff about the questions over possible EV road user charge because you're targeting a premium side of the market. Is that something you've even considered or thought about?
The question actually hasn't come up from customers. I don't think it really matters whether it's a premium product or not. I think the EV user charge kind of pissed everybody off.
It's a bit backwards, doesn't it?
Yeah. So no, the short answer is no, it hasn't come up. And I don't, and I think they've stopped that now too. So I don't think it's going to be an issue going forward.
Yeah, it was just seen Robert in the chat. There is no more EV road user charge anymore. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Robert.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dennis. I think that's all we've got
so much, Adam.
Time for. I'll drop you off now, and still some more questions I think for you to get to in the chat as we now bring up Tooraj from Perl Street. Hi, Tooraj.
Hi, Adam. Hi, everyone.
Thanks for joining. So we'll hand straight over to you. Feel free to kick off whenever you're ready.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Tooraj. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Perl Street. We provide financial operating software for renewable energy financing companies. Exciting times for renewable energy. According to the International Energy Agency, $1.7 trillion been invested this year in clean energy, mostly driven by solar, and more investments are expected to come. The problem is that renewable energy companies spend about $1 million per $20 million of projects every year on financial management. There's a lot of overhead and soft costs associated with managing renewable energy's assets. And if you look at the total scope is about $85 billion spent annually in just financial management. And this is because financial teams within these companies manage multiple dependent functions like construction, finance, loan management, billing, accounting, and they all use traditional tools and services that are leading to very unscalable operations and lost market opportunities. Our solution at Perl Street is to empower renewable energy companies to deploy more assets with fast origination of project financing, raise more capital with much lower cost, and really manage more assets on the operations and with much lower overheads and better unit economics. How do we do this? So we organize financial data for distributed energy assets. We centralize financial data. We enable our customers to portfolio modeling, funding requests, borrowing-based monitoring out of their own financial models. And then we add integrations with accounting, ERP, CRM, and billing systems with asset-specific data such as inverter data as well as weather data. And then we really enable them to automate and scale up. So far, we've worked with 60 over companies that have raised about $300 million of project finance, and we're onboarding about 2 gigawatts of energy assets. In the pipeline, we have about POCs with 10 large enterprise global energy developers, which will lead to about 20 million ARR for us. One of our customers, a utility program manager in California, secured a statewide incentive programs for virtual power plants, which will lead to development of thousands of energy assets in California. And we're designing in New York a statewide electrification program as we speak. I'm a second-time founder. My first startup, Block Power, and energy efficiency financing company that secured 25 million of equity and 130 million of in project finance. I know firsthand how the financial operations work within the developers. My co-founder, he brings in 23 years of experience in capital market and securitization. Last year, we got accepted to Y Combinator and raised a seed round. We are planning to raise more capital as we start closing some of our large deals. Thank you.
Absolutely perfectly to time with that little timer on there on the top. Thanks too, Raj. While we wait for the questions to roll in from the audience, I might ask you to go into a little bit more detail about your team, because you've got a very impressive team that you've put together in addition to yourself. So I might just ask you to maybe tell us a little bit about your co-founder as well and others in your team.
Absolutely. My co-founder, Arvind, he worked in securitization in a structured finance for 23 years at HSBC and larger financial institutions. And really his specialization is a structured finance and really going and bundling loans into securitized products. So one of the things that we have in our product roadmap is when we've organized financial data, how can we unlock the capital market for the energy assets that are coming online? And we've seen that trend with solar rooftops in residential sector, which is consumer loans mostly, but we see the same trend happening in virtual power plants, in commercial and industrial sector as well. And we know it because our customers tell us this is their vision. And my chief engineer, he worked at Amazon and Adidas, and he was the guy who basically developed their IoT and asset management platform for large enterprises. So we know how, and I come from the operating background, so we know how these things work and scale up. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you too. I think it's really great context. I've got a question here from Mitra has asked. I think you said you were the software, but one of your slides talked about raising the project financing, i.e. being the financier. So it's because he's just trying to understand a little bit better, like where you sit.
Yeah. So basically, when we operate as a software company for the customers, our customers raise the capital because they're scaling up their financial operations, because they're providing PPA, leasing, all kinds of hardware as a service solutions, and so they need our software in order to scale up the operations. And so one of the KPIs that we track and how much capital our customers are raising, because that capital actually becomes asset under management on our platform.
Yeah, thank you too, Raj. So you spoke a little bit about your goals going forward. I think you mentioned 2 million ARR. You got it yourself as a target there, which would be incredibly impressive. Do you have any capital raising plans? What would you kind of next year or so look like?
As soon as we close some of our large enterprise customers, then I would like to put more fuel on the fire, as you will, and so that's where I would start the fundraising process.
Excellent, awesome. Thank you too, Raj. I think that's all we've got time for, so we'll let you drop off now. Thanks for pitching and answering those questions live for us. And we'll now get ready to bring up Luan Atkinson from Renewable Metals.
Hi.
Hello, Luan. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Good to see you as always.
Thank you.
So feel free to kick things off whenever you're ready, and I'll drop myself off the screen.
All right. My name's Luan Atkinson, and I am the CEO of Renewable Metals. Our company is involved in recycling lithium-ion batteries, and our objective is to recover the critical metals so that we can basically put them back into the supply chain and they can be made into new materials or new batteries. Our company is founded by a team of metallurgists, so there's real depth in terms of extraction of base metals and essentially all the metals that are found in batteries, from lithium, nickel, copper, cobalt, and so forth. Okay, so just a little bit about our process and what we actually do. So recycling actually can be thought of in two phases. So the first step actually is around what we call pre-processing. So people will take a battery, they shred it, and this takes the kind of dangerous element out of it, and then they manually or mechanically separate out the aluminium, plastics, iron that are in the casing of a battery, and end up with essentially crushed battery metals, which is known as black mass. So a lot of recyclers will stop at this phase. The black mass then goes off to refiners, and in an Australian context, I think there's only one company now in Australia that is producing to black mass, but then that black mass will get shipped offshore to Korea or China usually for refining. The next stage is the stage that we play in, and we have applied for patents over our technology, and this is the part where we're actually extracting the metals out of the old batteries themselves, so from the battery shreds. What you can see here is a picture of our recent pilot plant, and this is part of the equipment that we use. One of the key things that's different about our process is that we're alkali-based as opposed to acid-based. And an alkali process is highly selective, which allows us to take out the metals that we want and creates a whole bunch of different advantages. Importantly as well, we are not doing pyrometallurgical or smelting in terms of trying to recover the metal. So we operate at a much lower temperature and it's much more environmentally sustainable. The biggest advantages of our process are that we can recover more than 95% of the battery metals, and this compares to about 80% for lithium for other competitors in the market like Redwood Materials, Li-Cycle, Ascend Elements. So typically recovery is pretty good for nickel, copper and cobalt, but lithium is the one that's challenging. And because of our highly selective alkali leach, we're able to get that high recovery. The other factor which a lot of people are actually starting to get worried about is the acid-based processes generate a lot of sodium sulfate or chemically precipitated byproducts. So sodium sulfate is a low-value waste product. It's also a byproduct from lithium conversion, so converting from spodumene, for example, to lithium hydroxide. And this is water-soluble and quite difficult to get rid of. It doesn't have much value. For every ton of batteries that's produced, there's about 1.5 tons of sodium sulfate that gets produced, so that's problematic. We also have about 30% lower capital and operating costs because we have a lot less steps in our process, and we can process all battery chemistries, including LFP. So just a couple of things that we've achieved this year. This is Marco Barney, our Chief Technology Officer and the founder of our business, and he's also the key inventor of the process. So he joined us full-time as CTO. Gary Johnson and Nick Vines here are also founders. This is a bigger picture of our pilot plant. Peter Bevan, who's the former CFO of BHP, joined us as chair in June of this year, and we recently closed our seed round, raised $8 million with Investable. So this is Ben and Lindsay from Investable. They're our lead investor. It's also supported by the Clean Energy Finance Corporation and Grantham Foundation. Just in terms of things that we're doing, we've done 2 pilots to date and successfully tested. We're doing a feasibility study for a commercial plant in New South Wales. Our next real big milestone is a demonstration plant, 1,500 tonnes per annum. And we're just exploring where we might do that at the moment. So we're looking at locations in Australia, Europe, and also in Asia with strategic partners. So that's our next immediate milestone. And then once we've done that, we'll be looking, or once we've built that, we'll be looking to raise more capital. But our key ask at the moment is really introductions to people in the battery value chain. So waste recyclers all the way through to mining companies, chemical manufacturers, and so forth. Sorry, Adam, I ran a bit over time.
No, that's okay. No, that subtle prompt is me popping up. That's all good. So no, thank you for that, Luan. So I might jump straight to a question that was actually sent through in advance of this session from Barry, who asked, is the space getting crowded with people chasing feedstock from various batteries and EV manufacturers? Is that true, or how do you, and if so, how are you going to combat that now? Do you think you will come?
So it's definitely true. The space is getting crowded, but in a way that's kind of good for us because that means a lot more people are looking for it. Our business model is that we actually want to work with the feedstock providers. So unlike, say, Li-Cycle or Redwood Materials, we're not aiming to go out as principal and then buy all the feedstock ourselves and process it through. We're actually looking to work actively in partnership with people who can provide the feedstock. We have some very clear advantages in terms of our recovery and lower costs. So that means probably quite a significant margin uplift for our process relative to the acid-based processes, and the environmentally friendliness is a big thing. And so if there are a lot of competitors, that can drive down price, but given the fact that we're going to be a lot more economic, we'll still be able to preserve our margins, we think, and have something very distinctive to say to customers who want to provide us with feedstock.
Excellent. We've got two questions here related to LFP. That is, I'm assuming that's brand new, right? Are you the first to do this?
So the issue with LFP is that if you use an acid-based system, you use a lot more acid, and the value of the material, because you can only recover lithium, is much lower. And in an acid-based system, your lithium recovery is even harder than with the other types of battery metals. So all of that means it's very challenging economically to recycle LFP batteries. So typically where it's done is somewhere like China, where the capital cost and the operating cost is significantly lower. But for Western world, everybody else is kind of steering away from doing the LFPs because it's just not economic. So, and that plays again into our favour, because if people are charging to recycle LFP batteries, we don't need a charge to be economic at scale. So that basically means we can, take that additional as charges as the revenue.
Thank you, Luan. I think that's all we've got time for.
Yeah.
But you do have plenty more questions in the Q&A chat,
All
so
right.
I might leave you to answer those by typing your answers in,
Great.
particularly for
Thanks.
Matt and Mitra. So thank you, Luan. Okay, so next up we have David Dorrell, CEO of Dovetail Electric Aviation. Good to see you, David. I'll hand straight over to you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We could argue that the world is worse connected now than it used to be a few years ago. At least that is applicable to Australia. We can see an example where we could usually fly very easily a little bit over half an hour between Canberra and Albury, and that is not possible anymore. Actually, we need to drive for longer hours in order to get from point A to B. And this is just an example of many other routes that have disappeared. The same way as airlines, and actually in Australia, close to 100 have disappeared in the last 2 decades, flying these kind of distances. And also that is applicable to other parts of the world. The reason being is the expensive, relatively expensive small aircraft. I mean, operating those aircraft are relatively expensive. Maintenance is really expensive. And because of that, financial viability has deteriorated, and many of those companies have disappeared. It's a consequence of that, and also climate change is going to make things only worse. What we'll see is that a lot of regional communities are going to be badly or worse connected as we move forward. My name is David Dorrell, CEO of Dovetail Electric Aviation, and we're going to change that. How? Our plan is to electrify the fleet of a small passenger aircraft that can be also used for cargo. And the plan is to convert existing aircraft into electric by replacing the internal combustion engine with an electric powertrain and many other components. We are integrating building blocks developed by others, but also our own technology, for instance, the battery pack that we're building in-house, as well as hydrogen technologies, and even AI and machine learning techniques in order to improve the efficiency of the integrated package. And we're going to do that because we think that this is a faster solution, way more affordable than developing an aircraft from scratch, that easily can take more than $1 billion and a decade easily to get to market. And this will represent a significant opportunity thanks to the commonality and the modularity of the system. Commonality because it's going to be applicable to the best sellers in the small commercial aircraft category. And modularity because we'll start with battery only, that will allow us to get to market very quickly, and then increase into hydrogen. This is a business, or this is a market opportunity that represents in the very short term $10 billion globally with very short flights, and that is based on our market research. That when we introduce hydrogen, will extend it to hundreds of kilometers, representing $80 billion in market. And thanks to the superior economics of electrification, we'll be able to reduce operating costs by 40%. That will multiply the market by 10, as according to a study by NASA. We have significant traction with multiple airlines as investors. Rex Airlines, that is our largest investor here in Australia, $7 million US of grants, multiple recognition awards, like the Australian Aviation Startup of the Year, and a revenue pipeline of over $150 million US. We're now in the second half of our seed round, another $4 million over the $3.5 million US that we raised earlier in the year. With those proceeds, we'll be able to fly in the next 12 months, testing or proving our power plant that we've already tested on the ground, certifying in 24, basically bringing a product by 2026 that will generate revenues. We're Dovetail Electric Aviation. We think that electrification is going to be inevitable, and small aircraft is going to be a massive opportunity that will allow us to introduce electrification into the wider industry.
Thank you, David. Right, so while we wait for the questions to come in from the audience live, I'm going to jump to one that was sent in advance. So how committed do you think the major airline carriers are to achieving net zero emissions? Do you think there's some priority for sustainable aviation fuel or electric propulsion engines? SAF seems to be the flavour of the month. How do airlines, do you think they're looking at a more holistic approach, and how do you think it sits there?
Well, the reality is that there's no credible plan to electrify the airline industry as a whole, right? The larger operators, the larger airlines, are focusing on SAF for two reasons. First, because long distance flying doesn't have any other alternative, even if SAF is way far from perfect. Second, because that's the only option in order to reduce or avoid renewal of the whole fleet, right? Because we're talking about massive investments that need to be amortized literally across 20 years or more. And that's why major operators, they will never say it, but they're a little bit reluctant about this huge wave is coming in. But the big opportunities with the smaller operators were regional airlines, because in that case, this is an opportunity to improve their business, apart from making it clean and sustainable.
Well, thanks, David. I might jump here to a question. Is it a straightforward drop-in replacement, e.g. in terms of form factor for existing engines, or is there a major process involved for each potential type of plane you're retrofitting? I think that's a great question.
But that's basically the key part of the work that we're doing. What we're working on is in the replacement of the bestseller internal combustion engine, the PT6 from Pratt & Whitney. And obviously, the form factor of that system is key, is something that we're trying to adjust as much as possible. So that's part of our engineering, that's part of our core IP development. And it's doable, among other things, because the motor itself, the electric motor, tends to be way smaller than the turboprop. But it is true that we need to accommodate other components like the batteries, hydrogen, and so on. So there's significant engineering behind that.
Awesome. And we've got a question here from Mike, who's asked, are you hiring, and what kind of jobs and skills are you looking for in the next 6 to 12 months?
Look, we're constantly hiring. So that's a very good question, because we're trying to attract as much talent as possible. I have to say that it's hard to find the kind of specialized skills that we want, that we need. And in some cases, we're bringing people from overseas, but we're really open and happy to employ people from Australia. It will make our lives much easier, and we want to develop this core capability across the country. Kind of skills, experience with electric vehicles, even if we're talking about ground vehicles, could be handy. Anybody that has any experience in electric aviation at any level, will be very excited to bring them on board. Battery technology and hydrogen systems, fuel cell systems is something that, again, is really hard to find.
I'd assume most people with the expertise in electric aviation, you know already, but maybe there's some out there that you're not aware of just yet. Thanks, David. That's all we've got time for today. So we'll let you drop off now. And there's still some more questions for you to answer in the chat. So I'll let you get to those directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Yes.
Okay, next up, we have Michael from Emmi. So bring Michael up onto the screen to join us now.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Michael. Okay, so whenever you're ready, over to you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Michael. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Emmi. We service asset owners and asset managers, or the buy side of institutional investing. But why are we doing this climate analytics? Before I get into our use cases, let's just set a scene. Larry Fink back in 2021 famously said climate risk is investment risk. Now everyone sort of thought that as well, but when we actually look at the numbers, if we were to actually live within carbon constraints that we need to limit warming to 1.5 degrees, over half the value of global stock markets gets wiped out overnight. Now that is not just material, that is monstrosity. That's huge. That's beyond belief. And a lot of investors know this, but they don't know how to quantify this. So there is a real need for institutional investors to be able to quantify this real risk that is currently unpriced on their balance sheets. And that's why climate analytics for institutional investors is very much needed. So what do? We basically provide accurate and timely emissions data and scenario analysis across all 6 asset classes, not just listed equities. We do listed equities, private equity, fixed income, government bonds, private real estate, and private infrastructure. So institutional investors have a one-stop shop to be able to understand their climate risk and exposure. And what do they get out of that? Well, basically, they can understand where they can basically create some alpha or protect their value erosion, set and track net zero strategies, defend greenwashing. But what's really coming into the fore now is being able to manage regulatory requirements. As some of you are probably aware, ISSB and the AASB standards of climate disclosures are just coming at a freight train at the entire market, and a lot of people are unprepared. So that's what we do. But you might be sitting there going, well, hang on a minute. There are other climate analytics companies in the market. Why is Emmi any different? We have 2 core pieces of IP that differentiate us from our main competitors in MSCI, S&P, Sustainalytics, and the other big data providers. Basically, we create unique data for our customers, so we get customized portfolio results. When you think about everybody else and their data providers, they have fixed data sets and they sell the same data set to everyone because it's a great business model, zero marginal cost to serve the next customer, but it doesn't allow full customization and full portfolio coverage. So how do we get to this customization? Well, first of all, my co-founder is Ben McNeil. He's a 20-year climate and data scientist, and we've partnered with the University of Otago and Griffith University to pioneer machine learning models to allow us to estimate emissions today for any company, any asset in the world, Scope 1, 2, and 3. Then secondly, we've created algorithms to quantify scenario analysis and scenario risk in any way, shape, or form. So again, it's not just 1 or 2 views of the world, it's any view possible to what the client believes. That is the customization that allows us to differentiate from our customers, and that allows us to provide transparency and flexibility, which is allowing us to actually win work away from the big data providers. So what do we need now? We need distribution. Our competitors, as I mentioned, are MSCI, Sustainalytics, S&P, and the like, and they have huge commercial strength. We are winning clients one by one away from them. We're being invited to big RFIs, which shows we have the product, but we now need help to be able to get our product out to the market and really compete with the big end of town on this distribution into the financial institutional marketplace.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. Hugely impactful there, and big potential for a big decarbonisation. So I'm not going to jump to a question that was sent in advance whilst we give the audience a chance to put theirs in the Q&A. So I think Barry sent this one in. He asked, is the integrity of data is critical for companies in making informed decisions? Like, how do you ensure that your information is accurate?
Yeah, so we 100% agree with that. What we do to ensure the integrity and understandability of our data and trustworthiness is we provide uncertainty levels, because we actually our team is deep data scientists and have deep statistical knowledge. We're still blown away that even when you have reported emissions, there's no uncertainty, because reported emissions are still estimates. So what we actually do is we actually provide uncertainty bounds for Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions, as well as our risk numbers, so that you can understand how robust these numbers are. Not surprisingly, Scope 1 and Scope 2 have tighter uncertainty bounds than Scope 3, because Scope 3 is a much bigger problem. But we believe bringing this statistical knowledge and rigor to the market allows transparency and then therefore trust.
Awesome. No, thank you for clarifying that. I think that's a great question. Thanks for sending that one in, Barry. Might talk about traction this year and you know who you're working with. Maybe you can give us a snapshot of kind of like where you're sitting, what you've achieved in the last year, and kind of like what you're aiming for next year.
Yeah, so this year's been a real growth year into all asset classes. So we started in listed equities, working across lots of asset owners and managers. We've now worked with a couple of key asset owners, and super funds, Brighter Super and Spirit Super, across their entire asset class range, to basically provide them everything they need to allow them to go and report to AASB when it comes in. We've also onboarded a couple of big names in the fund management universe, such as Challenger and the like. We've also started working with Societe Generale over in France, and we've also onboarded a bond rating agency in the US, Kroll Bond Rating Agency, who's using us to basically start to impute carbon into credit ratings. So that's really been growing. And our next big thing is, how do we start distributing through other providers so that we're not doing one-to-one sales? And that's what we're working on now.
Yeah. Excellent. Maybe we can drill down into that distribution aspect a little bit more. Are you still kind of like figuring this out a little bit, what it looks like, or do you have an idea about who you would like to partner with ideally and how this would?
Yeah, so the ideal situation would be to go through a big data provider. Obviously, you know, MSCI is a data provider, but they're a competitor, so they won't distribute us. But there are other financial data providers in the market, such as you've got FactSet, Bloomberg are a potential option. Bloomberg do have some I guess, complementary or substitute competing products to us. But basically, people that are already ingrained and sending a whole bunch of information to our clients, that our clients then just need to turn us on. So it's not a continuous sales cycle. We're also looking to work with consultants. So think of the big four, the management consultants that want to do the strategic work but lack the data and the analytics. That's where we come in, and we sort of like help reduce their cost to serve and sort of get their distribution in that side. So we're working on those types of deals.
Excellent. Thanks, Michael. We've got a question here from Chris, which we might make our last one. Just about got time for that. So how do you price, and do you go down to smaller SMEs?
Yeah, so we price based on, it's a matrix of features and asset classes. So if they just want listed equities and they only want financed emissions, it's relatively cheap. Whereas if they want all their asset classes and they want financed emissions, scenario analysis, then bespoke company deep dives, it does push, you know, to the low hundreds of thousands. So just, you know, 110 odd $1,000. We are working to go down to, we want to move to the corporate market. Our view is start with financial institutions, then start working with corporates. So we can work at the SME space, but we just haven't, because financial institutions and SME buying patterns are very different. So we haven't gone into that market just yet.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, I think that's all we've got time for. So thank you, Michael. Great pitch. And thanks for taking those questions. I have seen some more pop up in the last minute or so. So maybe you can get to those directly afterwards.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. All right. Last but not least, we have Neeraj Das, CEO of ElecSome. Hi, Neeraj.
Hey, Adam. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks. Good to see you. So
yeah, of course. Likewise, graduation day, huh?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, big week. So I'll hand over to you to round us out whenever you're ready, Neeraj.
Of course. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Neeraj Das. I'm founder and CEO of ElecSome. ElecSome is into solar panel upcycling, but let's talk about first the solar panel market. We are talking about the solar is very cost-effective, easiest power to deploy, has been a great help in our transition towards net zero and renewable. That's why we are seeing the so much of large installation, 2.6 billion panel we are talking now, which is rising to 7 billion by 2026. But these solar panels is having an average life of 17 years, and lot of almost 2 to 5% we see as a damage during the construction because of design, because of a lot of weather regions. So it's coming to the waste stream sooner than later. And the problem is that till date, except ElecSome, there is no sustainable, cost-effective solution about managing the solar panel waste in Australia or globally. This, what we do, process is unique, fast, and patented. That's how we are managing it. Why we call it upcycling? Upcycling is a new term ventured when we do a recycling and manufacturing together at the same site. So when you go to drop your waste, you can bring some product as well. That's increase the value of the product, increase the value of the recovered resource. That's why it's a calling solar. It's upcycling. And glass, solar panel is made out of 75 to 80% of glass, which we convert into solar-grade, which is the first nano engineering blend of aggregate mix. Why solar-grade at this stage? Because Australia's construction market is so huge. The manufacturing is still evolving. So the first step is to use the glass as an artificial sand instead of natural sand. That's the aim. We recover silicon, silver. Apart from that, aluminum as well. In the left hand side, you can see our first plant, which we launched in September this year. Sorry, I'm just, yeah, this is a bit of numbers. We started in 2015, 2021 operational, 24 million long-term secure contract we have secured. So we have the TA and EPA for New South Wales. Customer-wise, we have customer RMIT, University of Melbourne as a support. The unit economics is great. This is a great resource recovery is a very profitable business. That's why you can see 92% revenue per panel is 30, where it's a, and talking about the ionic liquid, it's a patented ionic liquid, which is low cost, non-hazardous, non-flammable, non-toxic. And that's the beauty of it. It's we are going to license it. This is going to create another revenue stream. At this stage, we are raising, the cap raise amount is $8 million, which will help us. It's a growth fund. So we have invested already 8 million, secure invoice almost $1 million. This fund will help us adding 3 more plants, because if we just talk about the number quickly, with the per hour rate, anyone would need by 2035, we are talking about 10 million panels. We would need 19 factories, but with ElecSome rate, we can manage with 7 factories. So we are profitable by 12 factories. So that's the main thing, question and deep dive. Thank you very much, Yo.
Thanks, Neeraj. I could see you racing towards the end. The time
the timer was great, basically, because I had a challenge from you that finish in 3 minutes. Don't extend.
No, great job. So let's dive into a little bit more about the technology, shall we, Neeraj? Like, what makes this like particularly unique and special?
See, the speed of our process, as the last when I was racing towards, the numbers are that when we talk about 2030, we would have constant supply of 10 million panels. And when we have 10 million panels coming every year, then we need a faster facility across Australia. Just we are talking Australia. Australia is a small market. I am into. So it's the technology is about that, how fast you can process it and how fast you can convert it. So that's where, and how accurate, what is the accuracy of the recovered resource. So that's where we are going behind the converting into value add product, glass into solar grade, the silicon, use of silicon into the battery grade, because battery, for increasing the efficiency, the solar grade silicon is 99.9999% pure, but battery gate just need 99.9%. So we would be able to use in battery easily. So that's where we are looking for those ways of doing it. We are not using, our process is unique because we are not using any burning, any of the water, any of the waste product. We are not having any byproduct after the process to deal with. So that's basically, the unique upcycling or recycling, what we call it.
Yeah, terrific. And so let's talk about accomplishments this year, or certainly milestones achieved. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you've been up to. I understand you've set up a plant recently.
Sorry, Adam.
I understand you've set up a plant recently. I'm keen to give the audience a sense of what you've accomplished and kind of where you're at in terms of your journey and progress.
We have received 2 weeks ago for our DA and which is approval for New South Wales plant in simple way. We are in looking at Western Australia. So journey is looking like by 2024 or early 2025, we will be an East and West Coast managing Australia before going global. Because global TAM is solar panels are there. And there is especially if we talk about just US, Europe, and Australia, we are talking about 60% of the solar panel volume. And as I'm attending the Asia Pacific Solar Research Conference now, we found that 78 million metric ton, which was basis of all the data that how much plant and what the financial modeling we need, that was wrong, because 66 million metric tons of the solar waste by 2050, we are talking in just China. So the volume is going to go huge. So we definitely need a lot of factories, lot of recycler like us to manage this. So that is going to be our journey at this stage for 18 months across Australia.
Certainly, yeah, large challenge, long road ahead, and lots of waste to deal with and tackle. Thank you, Neeraj.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Sorry. Yeah,
no,
sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's all we've got time for, I think, today. So thank you, Neeraj, for that. We'll drop you off now. We'll wrap things up. So I just want to finish off by thanking everyone for coming along today and listening into the founders in our 2023 Climate Solutions Accelerator cohort. They've been terrific to work with. It's been great spending time with them over the last 6 months in the program. I'd like to extend a thanks to everyone in the audience who's contributed to the program, making it is what it is. So the mentors, investors, advisors, everyone who's contributed. The founders are so grateful for your support throughout. So thank you for that if you're on the call today. And I'd just like to point you towards, if you're a founder and you're in the audience and you'd like to be part of a group just like this next year, then we will be opening our applications in early February or late January next year. So please do keep a lookout for that. If you head to our website on the Climate Solutions Accelerator webpage, there's an expression of interest form when you'll be notified when applications open. So again, yeah, thank you for all your questions. Really good and great engagement with the audience. Really appreciate that. We'll let everyone head off now and enjoy their Wednesday afternoon. And we'll see you at the next one. Thanks, everybody.